It all started when two nebula crashed into each other. Bam, bam! The two nebula, which were the remains of a massive supernova, were there. And bam, bam, bam! And this made a big gravitational pull that started hurling every dust particle that was left in the nebula go towards the far small point that was so hot that it was going big and big and big. It had helium and hydrogen doing the nuclear fusion process. As it was growing bigger and hotter, all the dusts came inside, many molecules inside, and the sun was formed. It wasn't as big as the sun we would see in our skies right now, but it was still something. Over millions of years, the sun finally became big and big and big. What about the planets? The planets were formed from small dust particles that crashed into each other and formed a bigger one. And as many dust particles hit them, it became bigger. And big rocks will crash into each other, making a globe. And these will crash into another planet, making the planets that we see that are in the solar system. Now, okay, the planets came. What about the Earth? Well, the Earth did the same thing. It got crashed into many other thing, and it became big and big to become the Earth. But that doesn't mean life existed there. It was a hot, boiling lump of rock, of liquid rock. Because of all this crashing, lava has swept its insides and outsides, making lava flow. There was no actual solid surface. It looked like heck. Well, this is how things were, but then something happened. The Earth, after millions of years, the Earth finally cooled down. It finally got solid surfaces. But you might be thinking, why it's happy now, right? No, it was a lifeless lump of rock until meteors struck it. Bam, bam, bam. Thousands, millions, billions, all meteors of all sizes hit Earth for millions of years. You might think this was a bad news, but the thing is, these meteors contained the molecules that would form the today's water. They had small amounts of these particles, but the meteors crashed. The billions of meteors crashed there for millions of years. So bam, 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 but then you might think, but in the middle of this crash session, something big came on Earth's way. Something that would give us our beloved moon, the planet named Theia. This planet was the size of Mars and came crashing towards the Earth, and bam. And yes, you know what happened. It caused a big explosion. But, but because if this did not happen, we would have not gotten the moon which appeared after the crash. Because of the crash, some parts of the solid piece of earth cracked and went to space, forming, but they were smaller than the earth, and those parts stuck together and made the moon. And the gravitational pull pushed it towards us and kept us in orbit. But that time the moon was much closer to the earth than now. It is said that the moon grows farther away from us every year in a minuscule amount. So then finally water appeared, and the water covered the earth. After this, there was no liquids, there was no solid area. It was full with water. And you might think it is happy now. No, there was still the sun, the ultraviolet rays that couldn't be. And the moon was far more closer to the earth than now. And you know what happens when the moon is close? There will be very, very big high tides and low tides. This caused the earth to be in a continuous turmoil of cyclones, tornadoes, waves. It was a very rough sea. Finally, after millions of years, the moon went farther away, and this led the bird to islands. Then the atmosphere was starting to be big, but it was only sustainable. It can only sustain life for the smallest creatures that lived in the deep blue sleep. So inside this were tiny, minuscule particles known as the bacteria and viruses. These were in the very, very deepest points of the oceans, where there were these tubes that emitted some. You might know this thing. It emitted black things that helped. They were vents allowing something from the inside. They lived here, and then suddenly these creatures became complex, and thus the first plants produced. But these plants didn't use photosynthesis for their survival. Instead, they used a term called chemosynthesis. This was a method for cooking food that was used by the plants the early stages of life without using sunlight. Then complex creatures came, and boom, 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 life became possible. This From there we continue on with our next series in this episode. This is episode 1 of the series, How Life Came to Earth and the whole universe. So take care. We are going to see you again in the next episode. Have a nice day. Thank you.